Hello, and welcome to my bookcase for a video review of some distilled spirits. Now, if all goes to plan, this video should go up the night of Memorial Day. First a bit of news. Last week, the channel finally crossed 1,000 subscribers, which is a bit of a shock for me. It's something I had been hoping for when I started this, that maybe a couple of people would be interested in actually watching these things. But it wasn't really something I was expecting to happen. And so I'm a little flabbergasted that it has. Thank you all for supporting me and for continuing to watch this thing. Wow. Okay, back to Memorial Day, though. So Memorial Day, and particularly the 4th, are days in which video reviewers of spirits, like myself, tend to have a really good time breaking out bottles that are very, very American, made by some big, huge producer, and sold for probably a little bit more money than they are worth. And you know what? This time, I'm going to follow the trend. I'm going to do what everyone else is doing. I'm not going to buck the system. I'm going to do exactly that. I'm going to review a huge producer's bottling, which is maybe a little bit too pricey. And it's very, very American. What am I reviewing today? It is Argonaut Fat Thumb Premium California Brandy. So this is a baffling product that landed on the shelves in Chicago around 2020, maybe about 2 years ago, I would say, maybe even less than that. It's a bit hard to explain until you kind of delve into the details of it. Now, so I'm going to do a long introduction on this, but I think it's important because this is kind of weird. Let me pour a little bit first, just let it get some air. All right, to get what is going on with this, you have to understand E&J Gallo Winery, and in particular their recent history. Gallo, let me come to my notes here. Gallo is one of the largest, if not the largest, wine producers in California. They're certainly the largest exporter. I know that much. Basically, if you think of the wines you regret drinking in college, there's a good chance that Gallo made those, and they're absolutely huge. They own half of everything. Constellation Brands owns the other half. And as you might expect, where you find people making wine with somewhat substandard grapes, cognac, for example, you will also find people making brandy. And indeed, Gallo makes brandy. They make E&J brandy, which along with Paul Masson and Christian Brothers has long occupied the bottom shelf of your local liquor store's brandy shelf. Footnote, actually, keep an eye on those. Not necessarily the bottles that are there, because they're not really very good, except for Sacred Bond. Sacred Bond is the big important one. No, with that exception, there isn't really a lot going on with those sort of American brandy stocks, but there's a lot of them, and I have to think someone will eventually figure out something cool to do with them. This is edging into that territory, but it's not there yet. Anyways, end footnote. Keep an eye on those brands and their stocks. Okay, so it's E&J is column distilled brandy. On the Argonaut website, they do mention a Vendome brand coffee style column. So big column still, but not sort of a big multi column one. But a sort of more traditional, huge but shorter one that's putting stuff off at moderate strength. I have no idea where this still is. I would guess it's in their big facility in Modesto, California. But who knows? So, anyways, that's one part of the puzzle you have to keep in mind. You have these E&J coffee column distilled stocks that are within Gallo's grasp, right? Other piece of the puzzle. Recently, I'm not sure exactly when. I've been trying to figure this out, but sometime Gallo purchased the McCall distillery, which is in Sanger, just east of Fresno. Now, the McCall distillery is a huge, huge distillery, and very old too. Goes back to the period right after Prohibition in the 30s. It was kind of torn out and rebuilt by Suntory, of all people, back in the early 90s, and they basically didn't do anything with it, but they put a lot of pot stills in. And then at some point, I don't know exactly when, Gallo got a hold of it. And there are a couple of news reports, circa 2017-18, that they were renovating the place for more serious production. I don't know if that means like it wasn't producing anything at all before then, or until they finish whatever it is they're doing. Because I suspect there's still some stocks there, but I don't know exactly what. Okay, so that's another piece of the puzzle. The McCall distillery, basically east of Fresno. Third piece of the puzzle. Gallo also recently bought Germain Robin, which is where to begin with them. So basically, Germain Robin is super important in the history of the current wave of American craft distilling. They were sort of part of the first generation post-Prohibition in the 80s. Basically, the titular Germain Robin and Ainsley Cole, who is still running around, started a distillery up in Ukiah, near Mendocino, so way further up north than these other places, to make basically cognac-style French oak-aged brandy using California wine grapes. And they've been around forever, and they sold to Gallo in, I believe, 2017. Now, I was never a huge, to be totally honest, I was never a huge fan of Germain Robin. I always found them to be, I mean, they're still, okay, they're American, and that's cool, but they're just as expensive as cognac, and they're made in the same style as cognac. So I never really saw like why, but certainly not bad stuff that I've had. Anyways, that's a third piece of the puzzle to keep in mind when you look at this. All right, with all those in mind, so E&J Brandy, and they're sort of big column still. The McCall distillery, and the Germain Robin distillery, which is, by the way, also pot distilled, sort of Alembic, Charente style stills. Those three things are important to keep in mind when you look at this. So what is this? Argonaut Fat Thumb Premium California Brandy. This is bottled at 43% alcohol by volume. And there is some blend information on the back of this that is, when you first look at it, it's unfathomable, kind of. But let me walk you through. So we'll start with the rest of the range. Argonaut right now produces, they do some special bottlings, but the three core are the Saloon Strength, the Speculator, and this. And I think if you work through the blends on those, you can kind of start to understand, the pieces start to come together. So Saloon Strength, it's bottled a little bit stronger than the other Argonauts, but not that much. It's like 91 proof, something like that. Gallo, do better. And the blend on that is entirely made up of coffee still, column distilled stuff. So that's easy to understand. They're presumably cherry picking from the E&J stocks, right? Things get more interesting when you look at the Speculator blend, which has similar kinds of column distilled coffee stocks, blended up with about 25%, a good dollop, about 25% of 3-year-old Alembic still, so pot distilled brandy. Now that is where did that come from? So on the timeline, it's entirely possible that I know they're still renovating the place, but assuming the McCall distillery was partially working circa 2017-ish, when they started to make the, when the components of this would have been distilled, it's very likely that it just came from there, from one of the stills they had up and running. So that kind of makes sense. You're taking column distilled stuff from the E&J stocks, and you're blending it up with fresher pot distilled stuff from your McCall stocks. And then you got this, the Fat Thumb. You've still got your coffee still stocks. You've still got a good dollop of 3-year-old Alembic pot stocks. By the way, they do mention varietals, and sometimes, most of the time, it actually says blend, which is not helpful. I will put what they put below. I looked on their website for the blend thing. This particular bottling, incidentally, this is blend number FT001. So however much that helps you. I could not find FT001 on their website, but their current batch of blends they have for this includes a lot of Colombard and a lot of what they're calling Emillion, which is not the place in Bordeaux. It's a little bit tricky. Emillion in California means Trebbiano, also known as Ugni Blanc, so the cognac grape. Anyways, back to this. So you got 20% of your 3-year-old Alembic pot. That's probably, I would think that's also from McCall. But then you got a 9-year-old pot stilled component and a 7-year-old pot stilled component, 25% and 9% respectively. Where the heck is that coming from? It's possible someone in the McCall distillery was, running the stills during the latent period, and every once in a while, just to make something. And this is also from McCall, but it's also likely. And again, I'm speculating on all of this because there's not a lot of transparency on where this stuff is coming from. It's entirely possible they were just picking through the Germain Robin stocks and coming out with I don't know, stuff that was off profile, or various barrels they could put into something a little bit less expensive. That would be my guess, anyway. So this is about a little bit over 50% pot distilled brandy blended with column still. By the way, I should say that's a cool idea. So you're basically taking the idea of blended whiskey from Scotland, Ireland, and so on, and transplanting that into California brandy. I like that idea. That's a really cool thought. We shall see how well it pans out here, but that's something you could run with. That's something you could make work in the future. All right, I've spent like 13 minutes introducing this stuff at this point, so I should probably get some tasting notes in. So a very complex blend of stuff with an enormous corporate reach behind it. Let's see what they've done here. So Argonaut Fat Thumb, FT001, presumably bottled 2020 or so. I don't know exactly. 43% alcohol by volume. On the nose, this is an extremely busy nose. It's like a golden raisin potpourri. There's a lot of, like golden raisins, kind of dried fruity notes. And then way above, like poking through everything, are these kind of floral. This is extremely floral. These sort of floral characteristics. I would go potpourri. Just mix this stuff. And that's most of this. It's raisins and potpourri. Look beyond that, you're getting a little caramel. There's like a metallic component, almost like an aluminum foil thing. But nice. I mean, it's not terrible. Lots more raisins, some, what is that? There's something plummy, but it's more like slivovitz than fresh plum. Like like plum eau de vie. Cardamom, there's a smoky thing, like oriental tobacco smoke, like slightly floral citrusy smoke. When I first nosed this, I thought that I didn't detect any American oak on this. I thought maybe it was all just like reused wine. I don't know what the hell oak they're using for this. Since it's Gallo, it would make sense that they're using like, if they're reusing white wine casks or maybe like, stripped down, rejuvenated wine casks, probably French oak in that case. But the more I spend time with this, the more I get a little touch of vanilla and a little touch of sawdust, which hints at a little, some proportion of American oak in this. I don't think they were using fresh. Not fresh casks and definitely not charred casks. This is like toasted at the max. Some figs kind of come through with after a moment. More fig Newtons really than figs. I mean, it's a very weird nose. The nose is as weird as the project itself. And it's kind of fun, but it's also, at this point, not very coherent. It's a little bit all over the place. On the palate of this, like a little bit baffling on first encounter. It's a very floral, perfumey, potpourri driven. And that's a lot of what's going on. There's again golden raisins, caramel, also in there, also in the mix. I mean, there's other stuff in there, but it takes a while to pick out because it's so... I mean, it kind of tastes like they just threw a whole bunch of things together, and that's kind of what it is. And it's sort of, yeah. Spend a little more time with this, and you can start to pick it apart a little more. There's some almost like a black strawberry note on this. A little orange peel. Honey, like forest honey, slightly, bitter honey, bitter heavy honey, cardamom again, that kind of metallic thing again, but again, it's not bad, it's just there, that's kind of mingling in with the floral elements. Yeah, the cardamom is definitely in play. On the back end, it does get slightly syrupy. I don't think it's actually dosed though. If it's dosed, it's very light. I think it's just the nature of what this is. It just gets a little bit syrupy on the back end. Just a hint. Just a little bit more than I'm comfortable with. Along with the barrage of flowers and, a slap of wood. Hard to tell what kind, but we're getting a sort of, overstewed tea tannins, some ashiness like pipe tobacco ash, some white pepper, that kind of thing. Again, no barrel char on this, but a lot of wood in any case. And there is just like a little hint of like a wet newspaper thing, which is not good. That is a problem. I wonder if they're adding a little bit a little bit too much color into this. I'm not sure where that's coming from, but often I've gotten that from that sort of wet newspaper thing from E150. It's fascinating. It's something fun to have around to kind of test your palate with, because there's lots of things going on, and it doesn't all make sense. And it's hard work. It's not bad, but it's also not good. So I'm going to give this a little bit of water, and we'll come back to it in a bit. The nice thing is it is bottled at 43%, so you can add a little bit of water. Now, so just we'll wait it out. And let me babble a little more while we talk about this. So the big problem with this is price point. I mean, if this was, you know, within, under 30 bucks, I would say no problem. It is not under 30 bucks. This is about $60, which I will say, even before, giving it a final score, that's way too much money to pay for this. It is not worth that. Let me give you an outline of why that price point is a problem. If you want an American brandy on sale for $60, what exactly is wrong with Butchertown by Copper and Kings? This is, I mean, I know there's older stuff in this, but this is technically a 3-year-old brandy. This is also pretty young. I think this is 4, so on paper slightly older actually, and it is bottled at a mouth-ripping 62% alcohol versus 43. Now you might look at that and say, well, but that's like, there's a ton of American oak on that. I mean, it's a little vulgar. It's a little too much. Like, you may as well be buying a bourbon at that point. So, okay, fair dues. The other problem is, if you want to buy a brandy for 60 bucks, and you don't want it to be an American oak bomb, what exactly is wrong with Jean Filiou Pouillade? Also $60. Also older than this. This is, I believe, 8 years old, last I checked. It is only 42% alcohol versus 43. But I will say both of these absolutely run circles around the Argonaut for the quality that you're getting. And that's kind of a problem for Gallo, isn't it? Now, it does it might give you some ideas, though, because part of what this is lacking, the Argonaut, the Fat and Dumb, is a clear direction. Like, there's just lots of things going on and nothing is taking the lead. So one thing you can do is try to give it some direction. These are 2 glasses of Argonaut Fat Thumb I poured earlier. And what I'm going to do is just add a dollop of these 2 other brandies in. Not too much. Just to see if a little nudge in their direction will help this stuff out. So you got an oak bomb and a kind of classic floral fruity kind of cognac. We will let that settle and come back to them in a moment. In the meantime, let's go back to our Argonaut now with water. See what happens. Oh, yay. Okay. So the florals, they don't really come out more. They focus. They kind of congeal into one, sensible note rather than kind of going all over the place. So there's florals and that metallic note kind of come into focus, if that makes sense. They don't. I don't know if I can put it any better than that. And there's a little bit of sweetness and some fruit that comes out too. There wasn't a whole lot of fruit on the nose before, but now I'm getting a little stewed peach. And like an orange. Just like take an orange and smell it. That's kind of what I'm getting. And it's an improvement. Like, this is a more coherent nose than it was without water. On the palate of this Argonaut Fat Thumb, now we're talking. Good job, Fat Thumb. Okay, so water brings out the pepper, the white pepper. A little bit of sweetness, a little bit more sweetness, but not in like a cloying way. It's just a kind of natural, spirity, casky sweetness. Lots of stewed fruit, some apricots, some peaches, like stewed raisin. And a little bit of like a ginger powder thing. Yeah, it's not really fresh ginger. It's more just like the ginger powder that you buy for $1 at Walmart. Still not my favorite thing in the world. Still a little bit baffling, but especially with water, this now borders on good. Score wise, let me have a sip for a moment. I mean, it's a tough one to score because, again, it's not bad. There's a lot of character here that I really like, but it's not particularly good either. So I'm going to call this an 82 plus. I'm going to give it that plus because it does improve actually considerably with water. Okay, so that's the final score, 82 plus. But now let us come along and try our own home blends of Argonaut Fat Thumb. First with the Butchertown on the nose. Not totally successful, this one. At least on the nose. It's kind of closed down. I'm still getting flowers. And a little bit of kind of American oakiness is coming through. Some vanilla, dried cherry. But what I'm experiencing is really a conflict of woods. It feels like the wood from the Argonaut and the wood from the Butchertown are kind of fighting against each other. This happens a lot when you finish something in American or French oak with the opposite. But here it's a blend and not a finish. But anyways, on the palate. Oh, no, that works. That's actually very nice, indeed. Oh, I really like this, actually. So what this has done is giving this a firm spine of oaky, peppery, cherry-driven, vanilla custard, American goodness. Like you're driving along in your F-150 and race suspension. You're enjoying some cherry pie with vanilla and black pepper all over it. But then there's flowers everywhere. So you've decorated your F-450 in flowers, and I'm totally into it. This is good. This would be a direction that Argonaut could go in the future. Throw a heavy dose of pot distilled, heavily American oaked bourbon in there, bourbon-like brandy in there. All right, but now let us try the one that had some Pouillat added. More subtle. It's gotten fruitier is what it's done. There's a lot more peach now. A ton of peach, nectarine coming through, like just stone fruity stuff. A little more white pepper on the nose too. And as always, the floral elements kind of stick around as this big halo around everything else. On the palate. Also very good. Also a step up from the standard one. A little bit tricky. So kind of does the same thing as on the nose. Fruities up. Lots of stone fruit. A little bit more of a tobacco-y thing on the palate too. More caramel. But still with that potpourri kind of character all over the place in this. Yeah, so successful experiments, both of these. I might actually prefer the Butchertown a little bit, but that might be personal taste. Anyways, thanks for watching this rather strange review. And if you're one of the 1,000-odd subscribers, thank you so much for watching. If you're new, welcome. Thank you also for watching. Argonaut Fat Thumb, FT001. 82 plus out of 100. if you see it on a closeout shelf for $30, I had to pay more than that. But if you see it on a closeout shelf for $30, worth a grab. Absolutely. I don't. I will probably end up using this for deglazing my pans, but that's not at all to say that I don't like it. There's a certain weird charm to this, and I like the idea. The idea of blending brandies from all over the place on different stills, that appeals to me, and I think there's something there. So watch this in the future. Watch American Brandy in the future, and maybe even watch Gallo in the future. Like, Gallo has more access to like cheap grapes than anyone else. So if anyone is going to use those, be able to make value-driven brandy, it's probably them. I hope someone else makes a run for it, but it's probably them. Okay, that's it. That's all I got. Thanks for watching, and cheers.